You're listening to Following On County Cricketer on talkSPORT 2 and the talkSPORT Cricket YouTube channel. I'm Scott Taylor, sitting in for John Norman this week. He's somewhere in Wales enjoying a cold drink on Tenby Beach. And as always, I'll be joined by two-time county championship winner Steve Harmison, as well as the cricketers Nick Friend and George Dobell, discussed all the latest from the county game. We'll discuss what's going wrong with Lancashire after yet another defeat, debate if Leicestershire are already up after their fourth win in a row inside 3 days, and look at the big wins in Division 1 for both the leaders, Notts, as well as Sussex, and another John Simpson century to boot. And as always, there's row to watch, so plenty to come over the next hour. This is Following On County Cricketer. So, guys, no John this week, me filling in for him. Where should we start? I think Division 2 made up the better headlines than Division 1. Lancashire, we've got to start there. Another defeat for them, Harmy. An innings defeat to Leicestershire this time. Dale Benkenstein came out this week and was very strong with what he said, basically saying the club either want to be a club that wins things or develops young talent. What do you make of that whole situation?
Well, I think they've developed young talent. And they're developing young talent, and they're a huge traditional club that need to win things. So I listened to what Benke said, and he was right. I mean, but the recruitment's been horrendous. The overseas have been poor. The pitches, you can't have the squad they've got, make up the squad they've got on pitches like that they're playing on. They're either going to do something with the surface to help some of the young players fulfill their talent, or they've got a huge amount of resources from a financial point of view. They should have anyway, with the size of the ground, the international games, the concerts and everything that they have. Then they should be able to go and buy or acquire two very, very high-level overseas players that can make a huge amount of difference. Now, they have one this year in Harris, who's ridiculous amounts of runs. But if you've not got a bowler in attack, or if you've not got a bowler that can bowl on flat pitches, then you're wasting your time signing the top order batter who can score 1,000 runs in the first 7 games. So that, for me, is where Lancashire are at. I would imagine there'll be ramifications at the end of the season. Somebody's head's going to roll, I would have thought. But, I mean, to get beat off Leicester like they did, 206 and 248 against Leicester when Leicester got 457. I mean, fair play to Leicester. We had Alfonso Thomas the other day on Following On, and he talked about what a great team effort it's been. Talked about the challenges of losing an opening batter and, Rian going up top and, fulfilling his potential with a bat. But Lancashire look, with Keaton Jennings packing in, Lancashire look as though, they've scored some runs this year. But, I mean, Harris apart, possibly a little bit of Wales. The young lads who they see as, building for the future, don't really think they've stood up, especially this year, or the first 7 games.
And they've got 3 batters in the leading run scorers this year, so batting's not been the problem, George. And as Harmy mentioned there about the overseas players, is it a case of, I think the question Lancashire have to ask is, if they do make the change with Dale Benkenstein, who else is going to get much out of this group of players? Because they can't bring in any overseas. As you say, they've got their overseas now.
I think you've got to take the batting success with a bit of a pinch of salt, because they play on a wicket where it's the equivalent of everlasting life for batters, isn't it? Where's the problem? I don't know. I don't feel close enough to the club to give you a really strong view. I can tell you this. The new investors are horrified. I think they didn't realise the toxicity of the relationships that exist. And I think that's a massive problem for the current management. And I mean management higher than Benkenstein. The relationship between a sizable number of supporters and the club executive has all but broken down. And it's been bad for quite a long time. And for a long time, I thought it was bizarrely bad because it didn't seem it was that serious. A lot of the... it seemed to me that a lot of the problems were misunderstandings. But to be fair, maybe that members group will feel they've been vindicated, because the attention has clearly not been on first team men's cricket, which is where a lot of the attention of supporters will be. And understandably enough, you can see that. But I would think that the top level executives like Dan Gibney are in quite a lot of discomfort right now. I think he's the longest serving male chief executive, and in many ways, I think he's done a really good job over time. I think that, the ground has been redeveloped, and Lord, it needed redeveloping, so that they are secure in hosting major matches for a long time. Because let's remember, they missed out. They missed out on an Ashes test not so long ago, and it had to happen. But you're always juggling as a chief executive. You're juggling the future, you're juggling the finances, but you've got to keep winning cricket matches if you're a club of that size with that expectation. And I think a month or so ago, I was saying that they've only lost one game, and sort of making some pleas for patience with them. But we are at the end of this round of championship matches. There's now a break. They are without a win. You do have to take responsibility for these things, and basically it's not working. I would agree with what Harmy says, that they have produced some decent young players, and that's a major part of the role of a development of a club. So I'm not sure that you would just say the whole cricket department is not working. It's not as simple as that, but there is a toxicity in the relationship, which is really unhelpful. And it almost has got to the stage that it doesn't matter who's right and wrong. There just has to be change. And if you've become the story as a chief executive, I think you're in a bit of trouble. The relevant thing, I'll just go back to, I think, and they won't say it on the record, I think the new investors are really concerned by the poor relationships between all sorts of people and groups at that club. And I think that will be a real problem for those who are running it.
And Nick, I assume we don't know what's happened behind the scenes with Dale Benkenstein, but the fact that he's had to come out in the media and basically say this is a sort of crossing roads moment for Lancashire. Normally those sort of discussions play out in-house, but the fact that he's had to come out and basically force the issue, this shows you potentially how bad things have got.
Yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily agree with the. I think I always worry when coaches come out and say, we could be this kind of club or that kind of club. Like, the club that Dale Benkenstein was at before in Gloucestershire were, smaller in terms of resource, both financial and in terms of sort of squad size, and there was definitely an element of we can, when they're in Division 1 particularly, we can develop or we can compete, but it's going to be difficult to do both at the same time. I do find it hard to hear that in a Lancashire context, because they are a very large, very successful, very wealthy club with grand ambitions, and we hear a lot of clubs, go back a few years to when Sussex, for example, went very youth heavy. It does always feel like a bit of not an easy way out, but it's kind of like, right, well, let's ignore results, if you know what I mean. Like when people say let's just do developing, it does always feel a bit like what they mean is let's stop looking at the results and let's just say, oh, we've got a young side, give us some time. And that won't wash at a club that has competed at the top end Division 1 for a very long time, top end of the blast for a long time, was only relegated this season, expected to come straight back up. I'd also say on the batting front, let's not get, batting is the problem, is a major part of the problem. They've bowled out for 200 twice against Leicester, as Harmy says. They've made 9 batting points this season, and they've got a bloke who scored 825 runs. They've got the leading run scorer in the country. They've not won a game, and they've made 9 batting points. I think I'm right in saying that one team in Division 2, Middlesex, that is, who don't play on as friendly a surface at home as Lancashire do, only one team in Div 2 have made fewer batting points. They've made something like 12 or 13 fewer than Leicestershire. Batting is absolutely the problem, or one of the problems, and actually it's kind of accentuated by the fact that the overseas player has won the race to, didn't win the race to 1,000. He got closest to 1,000 runs in the whole country. Marcus Harris has pulled his weight, and now he's the captain as well, which doesn't feel like, the ideal extra responsibility for someone who is actually performing. Harris, interesting one, because Marcus Harris was a Dale Benkenstein signing. They worked together at Gloucestershire. They knew each other. The overseas players last year, I don't think were. But yeah, the fact you're never in a great spot, I don't think, as a county side, when the functioning part of your team is the guy who is there on a temporary overseas contract. If you look at, guys who are far better than what they're producing this year. Josh Bohannon, who for a long time has, probably should have been the next number 3 in for England. He's averaging 30 in Division 2. He's a much better player than that. Keaton Jennings, captaincy, no captaincy, regardless, he'll be the first to say he's a better player than averaging 35, 36. And to the recruitment point that Harmy mentioned, and I think we've talked about the last few weeks at times, that if you look down their squads, there hasn't been any. Luke Wells came in when he sort of fell out of favour at Sussex. Michael Jones has come in this year, but Michael Jones was at Lancs anyway. John Turner came in on loan, partly because he needed game time, partly because he knows Dale Benkenstein going back a long way. But everything at Lancs, and I think I'm saying that the people at Lancashire would agree with this, is they do everything very internally. Paul Allott was the DOC. Then, Glenn Chappell was the head coach. Mark Chilton's head of cricket performance. Dale Benkenstein wasn't a Lancashire player, but he was Lancashire's batting coach a few years ago. Everything is done from within. The players that have come in are going back to the club. Michael Jones, John Turner knowing the head coach. Luke Wells is basically the only external piece of investment that's happened for a while. And then you look around the circuit at, and see Haseeb Hamid churning them out for Notts, and Jordan Clark winning titles for Surrey, and Matt Parkinson at Kent, and I'm missing guys. But the point stands, I think, that there are guys out there, and this must be infuriating for all counties in this situation. There are guys out there doing the job that their own players are not currently doing. That must be infuriating. But as George says, it reeks of bad management well beyond the current head coach.
Just a quick one to finish off on it. I mean, across the Pennines, who are another entitled membership, could we say, entitled support group.
Well, you can.
There, exactly. Yeah. It's better off if you don't say it, George. But no, look. They're the same. Yorkshire are the same. They're the same. Everything's from within. Looking, and they should produce good young players. I mean,
what I would say to that, the one thing I should say on top of that is that I suppose, when everything's done from within and you're winning, that's great, and it looks like a really aligned club, and you make great decisions because everyone knows, because people have come to the pathway and all that stuff. But the problem is when it doesn't work, and maybe this is, like me being fickle, like when it works, you go, this is great, it's a really well-run club, they're all on the same page. When it doesn't work, it just looks like everyone's afraid of change, right? That's and it feels like that is what is needed somewhere down that management chain, is completely fresh eyes to come in and almost audit what's going on and go, that's going to change, that's going to change, that's going to change.
And possibly from Benkenstein's point of view, when he's seen at Durham, when he came in at Durham, he was leading Durham. I mean, Durham had some unbelievable young, talented players coming through their pathway. But he also had Benkenstein. He also had Divinito, they had Breeze, they had Gibson. Chandler Paul came in as an overseas player. Hussey came in as an overseas player. The balance between them that came through your pathway and them that are going to educate the players coming through your pathway is massive. And like Nick said and George have said, possibly they're looking too much into what's come through the pathway and not at the bigger picture, which is, trying to develop young kids who can learn how to win games. And
just quickly, there were 2 teams in this game. Leicestershire, of course, got to give credit to them. 4 wins in a row now. But with the Kookaburra rounds to come,
four three-day wins in a row as well.
Exactly,
they're battering teams.
And also with the 4 Kookaburra rounds, is it too early to say they're all but up? And Alfonso Thomas, as you mentioned there, Harmy, was following on this week and said Rian Ahmed's going to play a bigger part with the ball, because we've seen the impact he's made with the bat. 100 at number 3, and just fantastic for them at the moment for a Foxes fan. George.
Sure. Well, I mean, it's fantastic. I mean, it really is. It's a wonderful story, and you're right to draw our attention to it and mention there are 2 teams playing in that game, because they keep doing it. And at this stage, you can't dismiss it as an aberration or anything else. Alfonso, James Taylor, Claude Henderson, they've got them playing well. I think Nick has put it really well in previous weeks. It's a team that's tough to beat because they bat forever. They've got loads of all-rounders, loads of options. They are, and this isn't a criticism, I never mean this word as a criticism, they have quite a lot of journeyman players in there, but that's players who, know their games, know exactly what they're doing, but they're also producing young players. And you've got 2 in the side, I think, that played this week in Josh Hull and Rahan, who are really, really exciting young cricketers. It's just great they're playing county cricket. I just don't think we should get ahead of ourselves of what they can do. But that's exactly what you want Leicestershire to be doing. I know that you could say the Rahan Nottinghamshire link is strong, but Notts probably owe Leicester a player or two, hey?
Mm.
I think it also
and
it also contradicts that theory of we can be a development club or a winning club. Like, you've
it
got,
does, yeah.
and that's why it doesn't wash. I don't think, like, you can do both at once. You do need the right experienced players around those younger players. They've used Hull brilliantly. In fact, they've used both of them brilliantly. Rayan's bowled like 70 overs this season. They just bowl him when Peter Hanscom knows that it's time to bowl. He bowls a lot of the tail. He bowls googly to tail ends, and that's kryptonite, isn't it? And Josh Hull, because they've got a spinner in their top three, Hull basically has like this spare player role almost. They throw the ball when they want a wicket, when they want a quick spell. He's not doing the donkey work. It's really intelligent cricket. And to answer your question, they're absolutely up. I know Alfonso can't say that.
Lord, no,
but
we're not there yet.
So Worcestershire went up in 2023 with 28 more points than Leicestershire currently have, and they have 7 games in which to get them. They could lose. They could take the next 2 rounds off entirely and still be in the top 3. And sorry, still be in the top 2. They're 42 points clear of third. Like they are.
No, they're doing brilliantly, but we've all seen Devon Lock. Yeah,
Yeah.
just
No.
They're not
They
there.
don't go. Well, they're not there. But what I would say is a lot of counties will get weaker as the championship wears on, because take Middlesex for example, had Dane Patterson for the first 7 games. I think he only took 11 wickets in the end, but they lose him now. The championship final, I don't think he's coming back afterwards. They'll be down in international class seamer. Leicestershire have Shah Massoud joining them for the rest of the season, so they'll return to the championship with Pakistan's test captain on top of what they already got. They've extended Ben Green's loan for the next 2 championship games, which is a bit of a worry for them because Green played such a big role for Somerset in the Blast. They weren't sure whether he'd come back. Green's one of those all-rounders. He's taken 22 wickets in 7 games. Bats anywhere from like 6 to 11. And yeah, it just means they're not losing him for those next 2 games. They're gaining Shah Massoud. So if they're unbeaten in the next 2, even Alfonso might come out and say, well, he obviously wouldn't, but they're doing brilliantly.
They're going to lose Van Beek though.
Yeah,
to get Massoud in, they've got to get Van Beek out.
But they've got that almost unused bowler, so far in Rehan, and they've got the resource. They have like 7 bowlers in their side, don't they? But 4 of them bat in the top 6. So
Chris Wright hasn't been playing.
Yeah, Wright's not played since the first week.
The opener got injured in the first game of the season as well. Alfonso
Rishi Patel.
Patel got injured first game. Chris Wright got injured. The telling thing that he said, the biggest thing I thought he said over the course of 15 minutes was about the way Josh Hull is going. He's bowled nicely, he's bowled quickly, he's swinging it more. And he literally talked about, him learning, while he was bowling, talking to him, going to see him in lunchtime and tea time and, getting close at the stumps, trying to make it swing. And the sort of the little development from Hull's point of view, bowling is massive and they've got a bowl. And that's what Alfonso Thomas said about Hull. And he says he's bowled quickly this year, bowled knocking tails over, and he got 5 in the match, which is good.
It's a Moneyball squad though, right?
Yeah.
They have taken a lot of players who maybe had grown unhappy at their previous clubs. Ben Cox is a really good example. He had obviously been a top player, but his form had dropped off at Worcester. And they've got him back to his best. And actually, maybe you could say the same with Rishi Patel. He's struggling a wee bit at Essex, and he is flourishing. You can see a pathway where he could play for England. They've got a smart overseas in Logan Van Beek, he's not a glamorous figure. I suspect he's not on massive money, but he's doing exactly the job you want. He's staying fit. He's bowling volume of overs. Barely bowls a bad ball. Nothing but praise for Leicestershire, and it's a really lovely story. It's great that they're relevant in every way, and it's not what they've done in the past, which is signing old, expensive players who are past their best and just trying to eke out another couple of years of their career. It's a mixture of experience and youth, and they're doing exactly what you want from a county team. They're producing players and they're improving the strength of the county game. Perfect job.
Great stuff. You can watch that interview with Alfonso, which Harmy mentioned, on the talkSPORT Cricket YouTube channel. You're listening to Following On County Cricketer. This is Following On County Cricketer with 2-time Ashes winner Steve Harmison and George DeBell and Nick Friend from thecricketer.com. So then, staying in Division 2, guys, Derbyshire up to second now. A good win for them over Kent. I remember, Harmy, when we got Mickey Arthur on following on, and he said, "Oh, we're not going to lose in the Championship this year," and we were quite blasé about it, like, "Yeah, nice to join us, Mickey." But he's backing up his words that them and
He said that every year, to
Leicestershire
be
are the
fair,
only
hasn't he?
teams not to lose.
He has, Nick's right. He has said that every year. But
He was bound to be right at some point.
it's a bit like Glenn McGrath saying they're going to win 5-0. I mean, it does happen every now and again, more often not in Australia. But I mean, Mickey's enthusiasm is unbelievable. What the telling thing for me, he said when he joined us at the start, is that this is now my group. Everybody I've brought in, apart from everybody that are at the club, apart from I think one or two, Madsen, on mine. That I've brought them in. I've brought them through. We've sort of recruited and developed them. And a bit like Leicester, they've got all the ducks in a row. They've got, an overseas who scores runs. They've got batters experience and batters of youth. They've got bowlers who are taking wickets. And they've got an enthusiastic coach. So yeah, I'm pleased for Mickey. I mean, they've won 2 games, but they just know how to not lose, and I think that is a brilliant trait to have for a team. So overseas player scored, runs again. Caleb Jewell. I mean, that's a massive score. 2 big 200. And you, like we said in the last part of the show, there's two teams playing in this game. You've got to feel for Kent because they started well, but they've fallen off a cliff because of the sort of lack of bowlers they've got.
Yeah, I think 7 points.
Even Jake Ball went injured.
Got Jake Ball got injured. Who's played for everybody this year.
Even the low knees are getting injured now. They are cursed. I don't know if Alfonso said it to you guys, but I spoke to him after they won at Middlesex and asked, I think he had a similar chat with George before the season started. Asked him what had changed this year from previous years, and he said that last year for them, their big thing was sort of learning how to avoid defeat. I think they lost 3 games, drew 10, won once, and feels a bit like that's what Derby have done. I mean, they've got identical record to Surrey, haven't they? 1, 2, drawn 5. But for a team that was pretty good at losing, and particularly in Div 2, where actually there aren't that many results, it's kind of about avoiding defeat and picking up big draws and the wins where you can. They've been it feels like they're on that same development path almost, and that it's that, I suppose, that one step at a time thing. But equally, because they're unbeaten, they're second, and you've got pretty long odds, I suppose, on Leicester and Derby being your top 2 at any point in the season, let alone halfway through. And I mean, to be honest, you'd got long odds in that top 4, wouldn't you? You'd probably have, given the noise around Hollyoake and Lehman coming in, given Middlesex and given Lancashire going down, given Middlesex's recruitment over the winter, you'd probably have expected that to be the top 4 that is in the current bottom 4. And then Glamorgan losing their head coach over the winter, Richard Dawson only starting in March, Gloucestershire finishing second bottom, I think it was last year. Derby and Leicester being Derby and Leicester, I suppose. You've got pretty long odds on that being your top 4. But they've played the better cricket, I think. Certainly more interesting cricket in the last few weeks.
Yeah, just 7 points separate the bottom 4 in Division 2, and I feel for Ben Compton as well, 150 odd, and then 49 in the match, and comes out on the losing side. Should we talk about Glamorgan? So I don't think we've mentioned Glamorgan a lot throughout the year. 3 wins in a row now for them, George. You did a piece on the Cricketer about Jonathan Trott going in and working for them, and obviously his impacts has produced results as well on the job that Richard Dawson's done, because it was quite a sort of a manic pre-season for them, with Grant Bradburn leaving so close to the season, bringing in Richard Dawson as the interim, and now finally looking like they're kicking on.
Absolutely. I mean, Trotty, I should say, was a bit reluctant to do that piece because he had a bit of time on his hands in between the Afghanistan engagements, and he just went there for a bit because he gets on with Richard Dawson and rates him. So he didn't want to do anything to, in any way take any credit for it, but it is relevant, I think, that he's gone there and results have improved. He's obviously done a fantastic job at Afghanistan. And it's interesting how, I don't think there was any interest in him at all from England when there were vacancies. Maybe old-fashioned in his views. But what is interesting, and it ties back to the thing you were saying earlier, is I'm not sure that appointing, and this is going to be the wrong word, but sort of celebrity head coaches is the way to go. Now, we've seen it happen. I would argue that we even saw it happen up to a point with England. But I think that ultimately for sustained success, you need more than good vibes. And I don't mean to diminish what some of them are doing, but the idea that you can bypass having a good system with a charismatic head coach who is going to no doubt work very hard and have good ideas, I think is naive. I think it's like a get rich quick scheme. And actually, it is ultimately competence that breeds confidence, and you've got to do the hard work. And Trotty would be a coach in the sort of Andy Flower mould. And that's Andy Flower that has updated his practices as he's learned and gone on. And I've no doubt that he and Richard Dawson have combined well. Now, he's not there, and he wasn't there for the last round of games, I don't think. I think he's gone on holiday. But he may be back. I don't know what his schedule is. And I think it's relevant that you have that level of experience and competence helping out. And again, it's got to be good that some of these clubs, Derbyshire, Leicestershire and Glamorgan, are really good examples of clubs who have been fighting for relevance. You know, I try and argue for the continual existence of the 18 first-class counties. And I'll be honest, one or two of them, Derbyshire in particular, actually, were becoming quite tough to defend. Leicester actually weren't, because they have always had this history of producing players, but Derbyshire hadn't really got that even. So, I mean, I can't remember who the last player they produced for England was. Was it Dominic Cork? Was it?
Yeah.
Or William Blackwell may have played after, but
George Scrimshaw. But
George Scrimshaw, although he was a Worcester player,
he was a Worcester player, yeah.
10 minutes before, and so the fact that they're all competing and winning even and pushing the standard up while these traditional powerhouses are struggling has got to be welcome. It has to be a positive thing.
Nick, and just a word on Middlesex. You cover them a lot. Do you worry about them? They're 5 points off the bottom now. I was looking at the table, 69 points behind Leicester. I know it's halfway through the season.
I genuinely think everyone's playing for second. Like I don't think Leicester. I don't think you can catch Leicester. Like they'd have to play, as I said before. But Middlesex are weird. Like like I'm amazed that's where they are. They've played more good cricket than bad, I think. They have put themselves and found themselves in some weird positions, and they've got 5 batting points. But in my head, I feel like I've seen them score a lot of runs. Clearly, I haven't. They should be competitive and they should win games, particularly. And they've got a very good spinner. They've got, if you're a batting lineup, like they've got a batting lineup full of names. A few of them haven't had their best seasons of their careers. They're about to have Kane Williamson join them for the next at least 5 champion games, maybe 7. And they've got the Blast starting now, which they are, uniquely, perennially awful at. No one's lost more T20 games in the world ever. But they are.
Is that right? Is that a stat?
Yeah, George, read my piece from this morning. It's the stats in the piece on thecricket.com this morning are quite a thing. They've not won at Lords since 2022, and that's their home ground. Yeah, I know. Yeah, they've lost. I mean, look, obviously there've been more games played in English T20, but they've lost the most games in the world. They've got the 6th lowest win percentage in the world of any men's T20 team since T20 started. But the one thing with Middlesex is they are like they've always been a confidence club, and I think like one format translates the other quite a lot. Partly because they don't have any white ball. They don't have white ball only players. They're very much, everyone's part of it. So if they have a good blast, which they could well do, they've got Kane Williamson coming in, Josh Little's coming in, although I think he pulled up slightly injured for Ireland a few days ago. Zafagoa, Ben Geddes from last year as well have joined. So if they have a decent blast, they'd back them to have a pretty good rest of the season. If they have a bad blast, having lost the last couple going into the blast, if that makes sense, the championship, then it could be an interesting few months for them. But yeah, as I say, I think that battle for second is really open. Partly because Derbyshire haven't won many games, and also partly because we're seeing so much fluctuation in Division 2. Kent were top after 2 weeks, and they're dead last now. So, Middlesex Lancs first game of the season is genuinely one of the higher standard games, higher caliber games I've watched this season. It was a really good draw. And there were a lot of, there was a lot of international cricketers playing basically, and So it shows how quickly that can all change, I suppose. But yeah, I don't know. It's weird. I would say I'm intrigued by them rather than worried by them.
And just before we break, guys, just a word on Northants Gloucester. I know that was a draw, but it just felt like a good draw, a good morale boosting draw for Northants, who've had a difficult start to the season under Darren Lehman, Homie.
Yeah, I mean, he's had it tough, hasn't he? Both he hasn't. He came in with this great the grandeur ideas and wanting to be along with Adam Hollyoak. I think they've fought against good sides on good weeks. I think both Kent had the injuries, but I think Northampton have played against a couple of good sides when they've had their good week. And I mean, Gloucester this week, Cam Green again, like Nick said in the last couple of weeks. Who would have thought signing a middle order overseas batter would work? But has he worked?
I was roundly disproven on that one, wasn't I?
Oh wow, has he worked? I mean, but you were right, 100% right when you made that comment. But you know, that boy he's not a number. You know, I think Andrew McDonald said this week he can open a bat and he could bat 3, he could bat 5, he could bat 6. So, and I mean that Gloucester side's a good side. There's a lot to like about that Gloucester side. I hope that Gloucester side doesn't get broken up at the end of the season with the 2 bowlers potentially leaving. But it was good to see Northampton score first innings runs, get a foothold in the game, because I think that's been their issue. They've been bowled out first innings for less than 250 on multiple occasions. And when you do that, you're always looking in the rearview mirror, you're always chasing the game, and you're always making sure that we're trying to survive here and not trying to sort of win from like being at the front. So it was a decent week for Northampton, but one, I would imagine they'll be kicking themselves going, you know, we need to win these type of games if we want to challenge top 3 as opposed to languishing closer to the bottom.
Fun declaration from Gloucester, though. They declared 100 behind on the 3rd day, the 3rd afternoon, which is what all teams, particularly in Division 2, should do. There's, you're not, if you lose, you lose, but you don't get. But if you're not in that top 2, particularly with how far away Leicester are, like you can't need to try and create wins rather than take the draws where you can, can't you? So good on them for this. They ended up being set 350, didn't they? And if Cam Green hadn't walloped a cut ball to point, or to cover roll, they might have got worryingly close for Darren Lehman's liking.
And I guess the worry now for Gloucester is how they replace him, of course, 467 runs for Cam Green. We're going to take a look at all the Division 1 results.
Can I just jump in there? I think we've got a bit of exclusive news, I think, on a Gloucestershire signing. I think they've just signed a guy called Aman Rao, who is a Saka seamer. He was a seamer from Saka, and he's enormous. I haven't actually seen. I've only seen clips. I don't know whether you've seen him, Nick.
No,
Okay. I don't know how big he is. I mean, he'd be Harmy size, I imagine.
I hope he's Harmy size in height and not in not in weight.
Well, he's big and strong and tall, and I don't know what pace he bowls, but they have signed him, I think, and I think he signed on a rookie contract till the end of next year. So they may be looking to offset any potential losses of fast bowlers that Harmy mentions, which I'm pretty sure is going to happen.
And good news, another Saka graduate finding their way into county cricket. As I said, we're going to recap the Division 1 results after the break. You're listening to Following On County Cricketer. You're listening to Following On County Cricketer, 2-time county championship winner Steve Harmison, as well as George Bell and Nick Frem from thecricketer.com. And don't forget, George, Nick and the rest of the Cricketers team are dedicated to covering county cricket in more depth than anyone else, with reporters on the ground at every round of fixtures this summer. Why not try their award-winning news, features and insights on all counties for just £1 now by visiting thecricketer.com/digital. Shall we move on to Division 1 then? A big win for Nottinghamshire against Yorkshire. 163 run victory sees Not Smooth 10 points clear at the top of the table. But Harmy, Anthony McGrath came out this week and just said that they're not good enough at the moment, Yorkshire. And does it feel like already halfway point of the season, it's Yorkshire, Worcestershire, and then the rest really? They're now 16 points behind Essex, of course.
Yeah, I think so. I also seen Gavin Hamilton come out and defending the Johnny Besto going to Mumbai Indians. which you can't blame Johnny for that, not one bit. Yorkshire are a weird one because, I mean, in my OCD yesterday, I was like going through the whole who's been the best so far in the county championship, first round of 7 games, trying to pick a side which is probably the best team of the championship, not picking 2 players from one county, but I found myself picking 2 players from Yorkshire who are really, really struggling. Adam Lythe is scoring a lot of runs at the top with Asim Hamid, and George Hill is one of the leading wicket takers in the country. So if you've got somebody that scored, Lythe scored 728 runs, you've got George Hill, he's contributed with 32 wickets. You should be in the top 2 or close to top 2. So not in the bottom 2. So that just tells you where Yorkshire are at this moment in time. There's not much else going with them. And again, like we said about Northampton, the Court Notts on a good day. I mean, Notts look a good side. Fergus O'Neill told us that they have this ability to take 20 wickets on any given surface. And Pennington come back when Tongue left. So Peter Moores is juggling it very, very nicely, knowing that wherever the player, they've got bowlers can sort of take 20 wickets. And I think from a Yorkshire point of view, they've got a lot of young players who came through, when Goffey and Otis Gibson had it. But them young players have developed. They're 3 or 4 years down the line now. So I think that's what Anthony McGrath was hinting, that we haven't been good enough, and we can't just say, they're just young and they're raw and they're developing. I think quite a few of these Yorkshire players have been around quite a bit now, played a lot of second division cricket last year, but just struggling to make the jump to the first division to stay, with any level of consistency.
Did you see David Milland's dismissal in the first innings, Harvey?
I didn't, no.
Well, I recommend people have a watch of it, because it is quite something. Now, he got some runs, to be fair. He got something like 60 from 45 balls. But he was trying to hit a straight one over square leg. Have you seen it, Nick?
Do you know, I'm trying to think. I've not seen the dismissal, but I've seen I think the 4 or 5 sixes, and my God, he looked $1 zillion.
He looked like he was
captain as well.
He's
captain.
He was just whipping balls from like fifth stump over, like effortlessly over mid wicket for 6.
I would just urge people to watch it and imagine what you'd say to him. I think he was top. Let me just check. I think he was top scorer of the
Yeah, he was.
Yeah,
by miles. Yeah. So, and he's clearly hitting the ball well, as Nick says. Just what would you say to him when he got back to the dressing room after that dismissal? I don't know.
Yeah,
but those things from senior players, I don't know what you would say. Tough to take. But look, the bowling attack obviously lacks a bit of bite, doesn't it? And I think that could be difficult when it comes to the Kookaburra part of the season, which is obviously next. And one of the key differences was that Notts had the extra pace. I mean, Pennington looked as if he bowled sharp at times. He was bouncing people out. And, we know that in the English game, hitting the seam and wobbling it is brilliant. But if you can do both, particularly when the wicket's gone a bit flat, it is brilliant. And Pennington came back into the side and showed a lot of those positive qualities that got him into the England squad a year or so ago. He's got a great engine. There's a lot to like about Dylan Pennington. I don't know whether he's absolutely a test player. I have no idea. But he went a long way towards winning that game.
Yeah, 5 for in the second innings for Pennington, as you mentioned. Don Best was indeed captain for that game, George. Let's move on to Hampshire against Sussex. A good win for Sussex, really. And one player that, probably like Wayne Madsen for Derbyshire, doesn't get enough credit. John Simpson, since he's joined, I've working out last night, he scored 1,872 runs since the start of last season at 78, 8 centuries. Again, a pivotal 100 in setting up that victory for Somerset, who were without Ollie Robinson this week, but still produced the goods. Henry Crocombe obviously stepping up when it mattered as well, Nick.
Yeah, the John Simpson story is very funny. In that it's so easy with these things to look at the selling county, as it were, and go, look, what have they done? What an error of judgment. For a start, he wasn't even out of contract. They let him leave a year early. The approach came in, Sussex gave him a 3-year deal. And I think everyone thought that'll be nice for John. He had his testimonial year coming towards the end of his career. He hadn't scored many runs the previous season for Middlesex. I don't think anyone, and I would include Paul Farbrace and John Simpson in this, thought he would score 800s in his next 21 games, having made 10 in his previous 200, averaging the best part of 80, as you said, still being one of, if not the best keeper on the county circuit. I don't think there's been a better signing domestically anywhere in the country for the last, I don't know, certainly the last decade. I mean, it's up there with, I don't know, this wasn't domestic signing, but he's up there with Simon Harmer, isn't it, in terms of the impact that a single signing can have at a club. Like, came in, took on the captaincy, which he'd never done before in professional cricket. I remember interviewing him just after he took the gig and laughing as he tried to recount his last game as captain, which he reckoned was for his club size during the COVID season. And before that was like some twos stuff, and at Middlesex about 10 years earlier. Took on the captaincy kind of on a whim, got them promoted, and yeah, it's I don't think anyone could have foreseen it going half as well as it's gone. But fair play, and it's not just him. You know, people ask questions of Tom Haynes whether he'd be able to translate what he'd done in Div 2 for the last few years to Div 1. He's averaging 55, I think, in Division 1. None of their bowlers have taken 20 wickets this season, but they've shared it around and they've made it work. And they've won games on both at home, at home where it can be flat, and but equally it can be flat, but it also spins. And they've always picked two spinners and committed to that under Paul Farbrace. And they missed Daniel Hughes for this game, I think, the Australian overseas. But yes, they're missing Hughes, and Robinson still went to Hampshire and did a job on them. And you'd say they're probably almost safe based on the number of points they've got already and what is likely to, I think they're 40 odd points clear of Yorkshire, who are only 5 points ahead of Worcester. So, what they've done, what John Simpson particularly has done is it's almost quite weird. But yeah,
just moving on to Hampshire.
You'd worry,
as well.
you'd worry if they're a Hampshire supporter.
Yeah, I was just about to mention because
they've got
Hampshire around Essex. I think Essex played very well this week, but Essex were really unfortunate in a way. And we don't know how much of this we don't know if it will happen again this summer. But they've done the last couple of weeks without their best bowler and their best batter, haven't they? And they've obviously lost Jordan Cox to injury, but they would have lost them to England anyway. And now they're listening to the Lions, and obviously I think the blast comes at a decent time for them. They played very well at the Oval and were unlucky to get done by the weather a bit, and in really pushing for that win. That would have been some win without, to take 20 wickets without Sam Cook, to score enough runs without Jordan Cox. But that's what they've been struggling with. I think they got 215 or something the first innings, and that was their highest first innings score for 40 days or something.
That'll keep Hampshire and Essex up though, the bowlers. They've got bowlers enough to win games to keep them to what I don't think Yorkshire and
I think Hampshire
was to have.
Hampshire, the batting for Hampshire, because obviously they've lost James Vince.
I think Hampshire had the season that they expected to have, if that makes sense. They knew they'd lose Vince's runs. They didn't replace his runs. Do
you know what's up with Ali Orr? Why he's not played so far this season?
No, I think he'll play. I'd be surprised if he didn't play the Kookaburra rounds. It's a real shame. I don't know. I've got no idea, to be honest. I'm really disappointed he's not playing, because I was investing shares in him when I was watching him at Sussex, and I picked him as my player to watch in this podcast. He's not played a game, but they've had a weird season because they replaced Abbas with Jack Edwards, who never came over, and then Jack Edwards was replaced by Brett Hampton, who disappeared quietly after 3 games. So they've had to do this season so far without Vince, without Abbas, and factoring those two bits in, that they've got to change the style as well. They've gone from being very frugal and very stingy with the ball to trying to blood a couple of young English quicks in Baker and Turner, and you lose a bit of control with that, and it's a very different style of cricket. So throwing the ball to Abbas at one end and Abbott at the other end, and just going, well, go on, lads. So I think that, to be honest, they're probably exactly where I thought they'd be, but they could do with someone to come in and score Vince's runs, essentially.
Yeah, it started well with Tom Prest, but again, Tom Prest is young. You got Toby Albert, who's young. Fletcher Middleton's young. You got Mark Stomans, who's at the wrong end of his career. So it's only really Nick Gubbins who would say, quote unquote, is in his prime, and then they're relying on Liam Dawson's runs every season. George, before we break, just moving on to Durham Somerset. I won't ask Harmy about Matt Potts not playing for Durham. You've the following on listeners have heard Harmy's rant about that yesterday. But George, a big win for Somerset. Tom Lammonby with a century, chasing down 260 odd, 3 down.
I watched a lot of that game actually on the stream, and I thought it was really interesting. I mean, that's a tough loss for Durham, but Lord, that is such an exciting group of young bowlers. And I know they had a bad day, and it's going to happen sometimes. And their heads dropped as well. But all these things are going to happen. Every one of them is exciting in their different way. I think Hogg is, he's potentially an England player. They probably, several of them could be, and they didn't have a good day. And there were quite a lot of things because they could have done with that senior head in the attack, no doubt about it. But also a lot of credit to Lammonby. I mean, I've really liked Tom Lammonby as a player. I think he's a really classy player. In a way, he's a bit of a throwback player in that he often plays within himself. And I'm always surprised when he gets out. And there are times when he gets out a bit more often than you would think. He maybe hasn't kicked on as you would think as well. Just on Lammonby, he's interesting. I think he's part of the stable, management stable with Root.
Yeah,
Stokes, well, Army, which is, I think, a good sign because they tend to go for very good players with very high ceilings. I think he is that player. I honestly think he's good enough to play Test cricket. He's maybe, again, slightly out of fashion in that he plays within himself, but he's a classy player, and that, which they've done before already this season, of course, Somerset, to win chasing in the 4th innings is a really good sign of team spirit and quality batting.
We'll chat Durham after the break. We just got a break here. We'll also round up the rest of Division 1. You're listening to Following On County Cricketer. This is Following On County Cricketer with two-time Ashes winner Steve Harmison and George DeBella, Nick Friend from thecricketer.com. Harmy, sorry to interrupt. You're just saying about Durham. And can you tell us a little bit about Mitch Talene? Because you obviously know Neil very well at Durham. Just tell us a bit, Mitch, because he took 5 for on his championship debut this week.
Yeah, Mitch is a very, very skilled, a bit like his dad. I mean, he was the fastest bowler in the North East when he was 14, and he was the slowest, like his dad, he was the slowest bowler when he was 23. Mitch hasn't quite got to 23 yet, so he still might put a yard on faster than his dad, but he is so skillful. He is ridiculously skillful. He swings it in both ways, not a massive amount of pace, but he always asks questions of a batter, inside edge, outside edge, and I think that's the beauty about Mitch. And a lot of the bowlers, them bowlers, have survived. And, you look at Sam Cook, gone and played for England. I think he's got something which every bowling attack needs. If you've got a tall bowler, if you've got a pace bowler, a quick bowler, a decent spinner, you need somebody to make sure that they're always sort of holding one end up, even though they are skillful, and making sure they're not going for any runs. And that's what he did. He obviously got his first 5 for in Championship cricket. He got a 5 for against Durham University to start the summer. I thought he would have played before the 7th game because of but Durham haven't. It's hard for Durham because if you play Ben Rain and Mitch Talene, you've got 2 very, very similar bowlers. And I thought when Ben Rain got offered a 3-year contract early on in the season, I thought that might spelt the sort of end for Mitch at Durham, and he might have to go the pastures new and go somewhere else. But he's hung in there. I mean, his dad's England bowling coach, so he's got Graham Onions and his dad to try and help him. And I was so pleased for him this week. He is, like George said, Durham have always produced very, very good bowlers, normally pace bowlers, but skillful bowlers. And the Hogg one was interesting because I think last week he didn't play because he had a tear in his thigh, and all of a sudden he came in as a substitute. And like George said, there is a lot to like about Daniel Hogg. He's not got massive amounts of pace, but his release point, and he's a very, very skillful bowler as well. So
why did he play? Because I get he came in as sub, but was Coughlin not available?
Coughlin's, I think he's struggling with his back as well. I think he's. Okay. I think what will. I'm only speculating this, George, but I think Coughlin would have been left out and geared towards playing in the Blast. Coughlin's more of a white ball player, and I think Coggers' body is sort of, as we've seen, he went to Notts and he came back. Body's let him down a little bit and why he hasn't kicked on and potentially played sort of higher up the sort of food chain when it comes to from the cricketing world. But I think Coggers would have been left for the white ball section, which is coming now. So I would imagine that's why Coughlin hasn't played as much in the last couple of weeks.
Okay, but just as actually as a Somerset supporter, obviously delighted Somerset win, but just looking at that Durham team, I know that's a disappointing day, but Colleen, Hogg, Minto, young homegrown players, all different, as you say. You've got left arm, you've got pace, you've got control and skill. Wow, so good. And actually, you could look at the batting as well. I mean, obviously McKinney. There's so much good going on at that club. Disappointing day. This might not be the season, but I don't know. There's an awful lot to be encouraged by, I think, if you're a Durham supporter.
And George, I think the MCC. I've seen something on Instagram this morning. Swanee was at the MCC. Mark Nicholas was talking about it. I don't know what the whole story that is. I think it's players who don't quite make it and get a chance. The one thing you have at Durham, that in the indoor school behind, there's an organisation called Parkview which is basically a sixth form college which does cricket and football and all this stuff. Ben McKinney, Mitch Colleen, went through. There was another one.
Luke Robinson, I think.
Luke Robinson. There's a couple of them who went through that. So they finished their GCSEs, weren't on the Durham Academy. So they went to Parkview, which is basically an extension of Durham's Academy. Did their sixth form, did their A levels there while training that 20 hours a week as a cricketer. And then, whether you get late developers or whatever. So a huge amount of credit to like Ashley Thorpe, who does the BBC stream for Durham, who's coach of that academy. I mean, McKinney and Mitch Colleen especially have come through that system. So there is more ways than just pathway. You are looking for late developers. But like you said, George, Durham have always produced good cricketers. But you throw them in with the likes of Ackerman and Beddingham, who's obviously been brilliant from an overseas point of view. Scott Borthwick, who's not there now, playing a lot of second team cricket. Alex Lees has come up the road. If you get that balance right between young player and senior player, you've got a great chance of being successful. But I thought in the game, I know you watched a bit of it, George, but I mean, Jack Leach batted 4 in a night watchman and got 30 and 44 for the last wicket. And it scored of 172 when Durham had got 270. That was where, that could have been a whole different game if Somerset's lower order. And it's not the first time. Pretorius has scored a lot of runs.
He has. He's turned out to be very good overseas.
Yeah.
They're a weird side. I mean, the batting lineup, they were 6 down and their openers were in. How do you work that out? But you would have got good money on the top order being Davey at 2, Leach at 4, Gregory 1.
Yeah,
it's very unusual what they're doing, but they do bat quite deep because of it, and it came off. I don't know. A month has changed quite a lot for Somerset, hasn't it? Things are looking a bit more cheerful for them, and it does bode well for that team spirit, as I say, that they've been able to pull off 2 run chases. And of course they were without Rue. Oh no, they weren't without Rue. He came back. Sorry, that's the point about the way that they were treated slightly differently. I mean, Harmy, you would understand that Potts is going to play presumably in the white ball series, and they wanted him to be fresh for that. And so Rue was allowed to go back on Thursday night and go and report for Somerset. And Potts wasn't. I can tell you don't agree, but you could at least understand why they did that.
No, I really don't agree, and I don't really understand. I mean, since the third round of championship games, Matt Potts has bowled 29 competitive overs. 29 competitive overs. We've had 4 weeks since then.
That doesn't sound right. But would you want him played a full round the week before he reports for England? I mean, in entirety, yeah, you've got a point, but right before, don't know.
Yeah, I mean, he goes and plays. He wins a game. I mean, I made the point. I got left out of an Ashes Test match at Lords. I was at Trent Bridge by lunchtime, and all I wanted to do was make sure that when the England selectors were looking at county championship scores, by the end of day 2, my name was relevant for the next selection, because I'm going to knock your door down. I'm going to kick your door down because you're not going to leave me out. You know, especially the way England bowled. This is my whole point. The way Cook, Atkinson, and Tongue bowled. Matt Potts has got to be going, right, I go up there, I knock Somerset over, get 5 for, bowl quickly, looks all on the stream and everything that, you know, going well. They cannot overlook me for Sam Cook or Josh Tongue for the India first Test match, irrespective
I don't think
of
he's in the same. Yeah, I'm not sure he's the same bowler. But to be fair and to sort of support what you've just said, you've heard how much I like Dan Hogg. Yeah, I think he's terrific, but he wasn't at his best. You know, he hadn't played a lot of cricket, and had Potts been playing, it would have been harder for Somerset. There's no way around it. It would have been harder for Somerset. And that's not, I'm not criticising Hogg. I think he's a fantastic talent. I think he might even have a higher ceiling than Potts.
Probably, yeah.
Very quickly, before we wrap on, I'm very conscious. We've been talking 50 minutes now, and I'm sure John Norman will be listening in Tenby. We've not mentioned Surrey. Surrey drew with Essex in a rain-affected game at the Oval. Sam Curran with a 50 in both innings for them. And also the Test squad's announced this week, George. Chris Wokes, how's he tracking? He seemed to do well for Warwickshire on his comeback.
I watched a lot of that one too. I thought Wokes bowled really well.
Yeah.
George, were you there on day one? Or day...
No, I'd
were
been
you there
at
at all? Of course you were, sorry.
I didn't go at all, no.
I went on day 3, and I have to say, if you wanted to come back and see it on any pitch in the world, Harm, you might have killed someone.
Yeah, I was going to say,
I've
seen some of them, yeah.
It's a worry. But I would say, because if you were there on day 3, there were a couple of decisions that were given against him.
Oh, there was
a leg before that was
there was one that came
the
out,
middle stump. Anyway,
there was one where they came out after they came back on at like 7:10 after when everyone assumed play was over, and it brightened up a bit. And
I'm surprised you were still there.
he bowled this. I was still there, or he was still there.
Well, I'm surprised. Well, no, he had to stay.
Well, but genuinely, at the end of play, Ed Barnard came and did press afterwards and said, we said, "Oh, it's a weird end to the day," and Ed said, "It's funny actually because Wokes used to use the Test stuff that when you walk off at 6:30, that's the end." He's like, "What are we doing? Go back out here at 7:10." But no, I was still there because I don't know really, but it's so hard to describe this. But and I assume we're talking about the same delivery. Wokes bowled this ball that like I can't tell you why it had to be out, but it had to be out. It was either I don't even know if it hit his leg. And I don't even know if he nicked it, but it was like that.
I don't mean that one.
He went up massively and
I mean
stood
the
there
in-swinger.
genuinely baffled.
I mean the in-swinger that hit the back pad in front of middle stump. Anyway, I
think it was. It must have been a very.
Worcestershire showed some fight.
Yeah.
Good for them.
The weather came to their aid. Certainly,
but they showed some fight.
They did. I mean, to be honest, they did very well to bat for 60 overs in the last innings on that. It was. On the third day, 7 people were, well, there were 7 instances of people being like smacked on the glove off a length. Ed Barnard let go of his bat at one point. It was great. If you'd like, I think it was probably a good thing for the game there wasn't someone bowling 90 mile an hour on it. But if you wanted to turn up like on a deck that was offering you a lot of movement, you would turn up for a championship game with Wokes, Rushworth, Bamber, and Planard. It was like the
I think they missed a trick.
Well, Chase Simmons might have.
And yeah, they should have played
damage on that pitch.
I say, I mean, it's good. It's rained a lot in the last few days. It's rained hard as well, and it may have helped. But if Harmy or someone at his peak played on that wicket,
it looked horrendous.
It's getting called off. It's that bad.
Sam Hain was 160 for 1 in the game, 170 for 1 in the game, and you know when you look at numbers at the end of the season, if Sam Hain doesn't score 100 this year, people go up. Tricky if Sam Hain didn't make a century. If Sam Hain's 2 high scores this season end up being 82 and 87, he got at Worcester, then I cannot tell you how many runs those are worth in reality. They are 87 on the third day there was like making 170.
Wokes he got runs too, which is relevant, Scott, to go back to your
He looked lovely as well. It was proper Chris Wokes, just driving it.
Elegant.
He just nailing drives.
It was a bad game for Sam Cook.
Yeah.
I hope they do stick with Sam Cook. And if there's any pitch which you might enjoy, it might be Leeds with the first test against India. But if you look at it in the round, it's quite hard to deny that Wokes will contribute more with the bat and with the ball. I don't think they're dissimilar in pace at this stage. I think it would be really unfortunate if that was Sam Cook's only test because it was flat.
Yeah,
and also
no
I
one
was
should,
talking.
no one
Sorry,
should be
Nick.
judged
I
on
was
their test
talking.
debut.
I was
Right.
talking with Tim Wigmore about this, and he was saying that Sam Cook's the guy, right? The next in line, county cricket have been performing really well. So therefore, it doesn't look particularly great on county cricket if this is the next cab in the rank and produces 1 wicket across the 2 innings.
No, I don't
Is
think
it
you're
fair?
fair about
Is that
that.
fair?
No,
No, like
I think so.
I
don't
don't
know.
think I've said this for a few years and probably go back to the Bracey example. I hate it when people judge players on their test debut because the nature of cricket in this country, unless you're a Will Jacks or Liam Livingstone, you've stepped to test cricket via white ball stuff and franchise stuff. No one's seen you play cricket before. They've heard
Yeah.
about you, if you're lucky, but no one's ever seen you play it. And I'd hate it in the same way that I'd, still feel for Bracey to this day. I would hate it if people went away and their impression of Sam Cook was one game against Zimbabwe on an absolute motorway that didn't offer much for any bowler across 3 innings. And I also just don't think people should be judged on what's essentially the biggest day of their life. Like you work towards that forever. You're going to be nervous in those 4 or 5 days when you finally get your opportunity. You'd like to think as well that if you've got a healthy pathway, and this is why I've always taken some issue with the Bracey stuff and other guys who've come before and after, particularly England's opening batters, actually. If you work that hard to get up that chain and they've got this long list that you've got to work through, how does it make any sense that you get 1 game or you get 2 games and suddenly you go from working your way up and up and up and up and up and you've got to go through all these hoops and perform for this long and you get 2 games and they throw you to the bottom of the pile?
Did you see the stat?
But if that happens, and then the ID and the pathway is all failing.
It's wrong.
I'll be really
Very
quick.
quickly,
Scott.
George. Yep.
Yeah, I worked out this stat that 12 of the 13 most recent one-cap wonders for England, so we're not including Cook at this stage, are bowlers. And actually, the 13th was an all-rounder in Liam Livingstone. Bowlers are not treated the same as batters. They do get
Absolutely.
1 chance to prove themselves. I agree. It's not fair.
Yeah.
Too much judgment on it as well.
So wrapping up the show then, we'd move on to Road to Watch. It's the start of the T20 Blast. Nick, here, there and everywhere, I assume. Where are you this week?
Good question. I think we're about to both find out in real time.
How exciting.
I'm Durham. I don't know who Durham are playing, but I'm commentating on Durham on Sunday. I think it's Lancashire, I think.
I'm doing the double header at Lords tomorrow, Middlesex women and Middlesex men against Sussex. I'm in Derby on Friday for the women's ODI between England and West Indies. I'm away at Indian Gymkhana on Saturday afternoon down in Hounslow, where I look to reach 20 for the first time this season. And then on Sunday, Merchant Taylors, maybe?
George, a bit of ODI action for you this week?
Yes, but I'm also going to watch Bruce Springsteen. A lot of cricket there. And then I'm playing, which is a bit terrifying. I'm playing for Wisden. Anyway, that's a disappointing. I don't know. They must have got me in a weak moment.
Yeah.
I can't even blame alcohol because I've given it up.
I'm going to say they could fill me with 15, 20 pints and I'd still, I think, make the right decision. Do you miss playing cricket? No, I don't. It hurts too much. Do you want to play cricket again? No, I don't.
Well, if you get more than 20,
when did you last play?
I'll go for more.
When did I last play? I think I played the Ashton's Academy game 2 years ago. It was one of the best games I've ever played in my life. I batted at number 11. I've been pads on from about 15 overs for the last 20 overs because we were 50 for 8. Didn't get to bat, which was great. Fielded 35 overs and didn't bowl. It was heaven. I was so sore for fielding 35 overs the next day. I give my boots away and the whites in the shirt I was wearing because I just did. I'm now going to work the theory that if I've got no kit, I can't.
Have you ever been asked to play in those Legends Leagues?
I couldn't think of it. Yes, I wish and 1 or 2 other people have asked me. And
Are they short conversations?
No matter what notes is on the end of that check, this body is not moving other than walking down a fairway. That's about as fast as it's ever going to get.
I love that
Great
we
stuff.
mentioned that South London side. You can really tell John's away.
It's great, isn't it?
Against Richmond. 420 odd to be rolled out for 2. Great stuff, guys. I'm not sure when we'll be back. I'm not sure if we'll be doing a show next week around the Blast or we'll be back after the next round of Kookaburra games.
Can I say one thing about Northampton v Richmond? Okay, Northampton v Richmond. Northampton, I share a fence with Northampton. There are 5 clubs back to back. So it wasn't in my league, but it was in the Middlesex Cricket League pyramid. I want to just say I felt for Richmond. I feel for Richmond. They're a bloody strong club who I suspect won't find it as funny as everyone else. And actually, our 4th 11 are playing their falls this weekend. And I've said to our falls skipper, I don't envy you because I reckon they'll be stacked. they're never going to be stronger than the team that rocks up and batters our falls this weekend. But yeah, I felt for them. It was a perfect storm. I actually don't find things like that quite as amusing, maybe as others, because like
As a clubby yourself.
yeah, but I just think you look at a scorecard like that, there are probably a load of kids on the side, and there are probably
Yeah.
people who probably won't want to play again, and I don't think that's great for cricket. And I spent a lot. I had dinner with a few club mates last night, and we were speculating on what we would have done if we'd been bowled out for two, and how we'd have taken it. We've agreed that we'd have taken it really well. Don't know.
Okay, we'll end it there. Nick, George, Harmy, great stuff. We might be back next week for the Blast. We might be back the week after the Kookaburra Rounds. But for now, this has been Following On County Cricketer.